Okay, we're going to put the adjustment handle together for the press wheels. First thing that goes in is the handle, and I put it in the same spot for all 18 of them, so when it's together they should all be aligned the same. Then the spring goes next, big washer, and then there's a clip that goes in there that holds it all in place. Just like that. And the next step that goes in is the bracket. It's cut out on the bottom. That goes in these two holes just like that, with the cutout going towards the bottom. And then a washer goes in there. And then a nylon gear goes in there. And when that's all together, that nylon gear fits right in that hole, just like that. The washer on the inside. Just like that. Then there's two bolts. Go through and hold that in place. Through the bottom. There we go. Alright, next thing that goes in is the cam. It drops in that hole right there. And this washer goes underneath it. It fits right around that cam. Lines up over that hole right there. And the shaft goes in next. There's a hole here for a pin. Make sure that's going to the back, otherwise you'll have a lot of trouble getting that in. There you go. Another nylon washer goes on top of that to lock into the first one. Sometimes you got to jiggle it around a little bit to get it lined up. And we've got a square washer that goes right on the top of that. Walk through there. And then that roll pin goes right in there and holds it all in place. Alright, once that's all together, there's a hole right here where the other end of that pin drops through. We'll just flip this over. Right there's another hole in there. You drop the washer over that, and then a second roll pin goes in right there. Got one more bolt to put this back together here. Here's a little better view of it when it's all put together and tightened up. Alright, I'm going to start installing the new disc now. I ordered 18 right side, 18 left side. Each disc comes with its own packet. It's got a dust cover. It's got two spacers, a thick one and a thin one, and a new bolt. The main difference between the right side and the left side is the bolt threads. One's right hand thread and one's left hand thread. Alright, I'm going to start out with a big shim and the disc and the dust cover. And the easiest way to remember it, when it's going forward, the disc turns this way, so the bolt will turn the same way to tighten. That way the bolt will never loosen up as long as it's going forward. tightened up. Just wanted to do a little more detail on these mud scrapers. You can put them in the wrong way. You can see that they're V-shaped like this. You want to make sure that V is up at the top, otherwise it won't reach the outside edge of the disc. And put our big spacer in there again. Dust cap. And then the bolt that's threaded the opposite direction. And once again, the disc is turning this way and the bolt will turn the same way to tighten. That way it'll never loosen up when it's moving. Tightened up good. And that one turns nice and easy, so we don't need the extra spacer on that side either. It's a little different view there. You can see the mud scrapers in the side. When the blades turn, that'll scrape the mud off from them. And then they come right to a tight point right here in the front. We'll put the press wheel on now. First thing that goes on is there's a rubber gasket that keeps the dirt out of the bearing. That goes on there first. And then we've got a washer and then a spacer. Comes up underneath. Got a lock washer and a nut. And once you start to tighten that, you'll see that axle will spin in there. It's got a thread in the top. There we go. Okay, I'm going to assemble one of the seat cups. The first thing that goes on is the big washer, square washer spacer. The second thing that goes on is 3 smaller spacers. These are really thin. These are designed to fit right on the end of that so it doesn't rub. And got those 3 right there. Then the next piece is the sleeve right here. You see one end is beveled. That's got to go towards the gear, towards the seat cup. The next piece is the seat cup. The gear goes right in this part here, but the gear won't go all the way through, so you got to make sure you get the seat cup in first and then slide the gear in from the other side. There's our seat cup. And slide our gear in, and when you see on that gear it's hollowed out right in here, and a spring washer goes right on the other side of that. I don't know if you can see this or not, but that's curved, and that goes up against there to give just a little bit of cushion. And there's our spring washer, and then this pin goes in to the hole that slides inside there. Pin. You want to make sure that the spring washer goes up against that so it springs good. And the seat cup goes right over that. And then from the other side, that slides right into those grooves right there. And then our 3 spacers go in against that. Our big washer goes in there. And that leaves just enough room to slide the cotter pin in. And once that cotter pin's set, then the axle will spin on there, and this will go back and forth to adjust the amount of grain that comes out. This is the gear assembly that turns the grass box on the front of the cedar. So if you don't have a grass box on yours, you may not have this. This is just a gear with a brass bushing inside it. I took the bushing out and replaced them. They're only a couple bucks at the hardware store. Put new ones in there. This part gets a little tricky. This is what goes right on the axle. This part goes inside here like this, and you'll notice this gear isn't perfectly square. It's kind of odd shaped. What happens is you've got this washer that's also odd shaped, and this washer goes on the inside just like that to line up with it. And then it's got these two clips that go inside there and hold that in place. And once these two clips are in, if you can see that, then that makes a square, and then that's what slides over the axle. And I'll show you that when we get this together a little bit further. So we got that piece together. This goes here. And then this piece is the bracket that holds onto it, and that goes on the side. And one thing you got to remember, you got to put the chain on it before you slide it over the axle, otherwise you're going to have to take the chain apart. It's got square holes in there for a carriage bolt, and the bracket goes in. And then the front arm goes on. And then a second carriage bolt goes here, and you can see this is oblong. This is the adjustment. The chain will go on the inside. Pulley. And then the second chain will go up to the grass seed box. So when the axle turns, it'll turn this pulley, which is locked together with these gears, and that'll spin the grass seed box. Just slides on just like that. This is the cross brace where the front of the cylinder goes on this side and the jack stand goes on the other. You can see this is pretty thin metal, and it started to pull apart here. So somewhere in the past somebody got a 3/8 thick piece of steel, cut it out the same shape as this. So we'll just run those bolts right through there to brace it up, and the jack stand goes right on the back, and the hook for the cylinder goes right to the front, just like that. Going to start assembling the adjustment arm. We've got the arm here, and then it's got a spacer, kind of a bushing, and it's got a notch on the end of it, and that fits right through that hole with a notch towards the bottom. Then there's a special washer that's notched out the same way, and that goes on the front. Then the bracket that holds it, it's got a square hole in it, and it's got a carriage bolt that drops in there, and then that square hole keeps that carriage bolt from turning. And that goes through the assembly, and on the back we've got a washer and a lock washer and the nut, and that spacer lets you tighten it up as tight as you need to get it, but won't let it pinch, and that way your adjuster keeps moving. Alright, there is a right and a left side to this. So the spring goes on first, then the small gear with the brass bushing goes on, and it's got teeth in it, and these pieces, there's a right and a left, and this goes over it, and then this one goes this way, and this comes down and hooks on there. And when the cylinder comes down, what it does is it pushes this and pushes into the spring, and it disengages the gears, and this wheel goes on the outside, and when those gears are disengaged, then the seed stops falling. But if you do it the wrong side on the wrong way, then it's not going to work. And it takes a little tweaking to get it all in there, but that's what it looks like when it's done. Okay. Okay, here's what it looks like once it's together. When the cylinder pulls it down, those two shims go together and pulls the spacer out, and that disengages the gears in there, and that'll let this spin without engaging the center gear, and that way it'll stop dropping seed. And then when it goes back together, then they catch, and then it starts dropping seed again. Both sprockets turn. Starting to put the cedar arms back in. It's just the opposite of when you take them off. If you're lucky, this little tool is mounted on the inside of the fender. What that does is it pushes these two springs together, and you drop the arm on there, and when you pull that tool off, these two parts snap back in and hold it in place. Basically, you just squeeze these two parts together here, and that's how you take them off with the tool. See if we can get inside here. And then you can see once you take that off, these little plastic cups go right inside the arms, and that's what holds it in place. And that's what it looks like with the tool on, and that's what it looks like before. Okay, gonna start putting the springs back on. The easiest thing to do is make sure it's locked in place. So these arms right here are up as far as they'll go. Put the springs on, line these pieces up right here, so that shaft lines right up inside there like that. Then I come around to the back and lift it up and put a block of wood under there to hold that wheel up. When that wheel's blocked up, then the end of the shaft comes through and you can pop your pin in there. Of course, it'd be a lot easier if you had a second person, then you could just stay in the back and they could put the pins in the front. But this will work if you're by yourself. And once the pin's in there, you pull the block of wood back out, and then you're all set with that one, ready to go to the next one. Well, I think it turned out pretty good. Ran out of time to get the step boards on. Got to get some stuff planted, but that's the only thing left to do. Everything that was rusty has been sandblasted, painted. Everything that was broke or worn out has been replaced. Should be ready to go. Hopefully I can get another 20-30 years out of it.